and they're a great group of rowdy people that really throw some of like I would say the rowdiest art shows in LA. Like you could go to a Super Chief show and see cop cars flipped over and flamethrowers shooting into the sky. It's kind of thing. It's not always that crazy, but it can turn up. You know.
When I get to them pearly gates, gonna crack myself a bed. Gonna ask the man in charge, how did I get here? I visit my dear wife. She ain't aged a day. She's just to the nines, like a French maid. It's all you can eat.
Welcome to the Marinade, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. Each episode, we welcome musicians, actors, comedians, authors, visual artists, filmmakers, anyone who creates art to talk about how and why we make stuff. This is episode 195, and our guest is Luke Pelletier. Luke is a singer, a songwriter, a visual artist, record label owner. He wears so many hats and wears them all so masterfully. He's based in Los Angeles, and his new album, American Cheese, will be released on August 1st, 2025. Y'all, this record is a wild ride. It leads off with the story of Luke running afoul of the law before his bipolar diagnosis, and then careens into fascinating tale after fascinating tale. As you'll hear in this episode, the bipolar is now being treated, and Luke is making incredibly cool art across multiple mediums. This was an absolute blast of a conversation. I'm grateful to have connected with Luke and all of the different things that he's got going on, and it is my pleasure to bring you my conversation with Luke Pelletier.
Pressing 12-ounce cans. And if you need a harmony, the Carter family lends a hand.
Who's that rascal in your lap?
This is Rooster.
Rooster, hey, you were too precious.
Yeah, he actually went blind within the last year, so it was like his retina's degenerated, I guess, or something like that. But he's all right. He's adjusted a lot to it. When he first went blind, it was hard because he was afraid of everything. But he has since gotten used to the blindness.
Oh my goodness! For folks listening, was he a pug?
Yeah.
Rooster's an adorable pug who's getting pet on by Luke. Man, thank you again for doing this. I've been listening to your record American Cheese, and what a wild ride. And I've listened to it. I just went on a road trip, what I call my grounded summer tour, and I went to cover Bonnaroo and got up into Tennessee and Nashville, and so I burned a CD, and I probably listened to that record 20 times, man. And I cannot wait to dive into it because it's an absolute wild ride, and I'm really stoked for folks to hear it.
Oh yeah. I'm really excited about it. Yeah, we recorded the whole thing in my garage, over a couple sessions with my buds, and I'm real stoked on how it all turned out.
Man, that's awesome. Okay, well, before we get to that, though, this has been an interesting conversation to do research for. I'm sitting in Ocala, Florida right now, and I live full time in Orlando. And so I'm curious about your upbringing, and because I know you're originally from around here, right?
Yeah, so I was born in Tampa, and I
Okay.
grew up. I was living in Brandon, kind of like right outside Tampa. Or I guess it's like right in that area. And I left when I was 7, so I was there for enough time that I have like some like vivid memories of it, but like wasn't really oriented to the location so much, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would grow up, and I would spend a lot of times. We'd drive over to Lake Wales for my dad. He was really into bird dog hunting, so we'd go out there on the weekends, and he'd do bird dog hunting. Yeah.
Well, because I noticed like right now there's a painting behind you. I assume one of yours that has an
Oh yeah, it's a collaboration with my wife. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That has a gator on it. And then I was watching other videos in your creative space there, and there were gators everywhere. and then a gator on one of your guitars. This beautiful painting depicting, um, speaking of your father, just depicting some real life events involving your father and an alligator. Can you tell the folks this wonderful story?
Yeah, yeah. So when I was we would, like I was talking about, we would go hunting in, or my dad would go hunting in this place called Lake Wales in Florida, and we drive out there every weekend, and we'd stay in a trailer. And the way the hunting grounds is kind of set up is a bunch of camper trailers all kind of surrounding this little pond. And me and my brothers would go fishing and swimming in that pond while my dad was over there hunting. And one day my dad comes back from hunting, and he's on the ATV, and he's got the dog with him, and he kind of starts running towards us at the water and kind of yelling at us all to come in. And I remembered from the tone of his voice, I could tell that something was really wrong, but I was kind of afraid of him. So I'm kind of like swimming in kind of tentatively, I would say. And he's kind of aiming the gun past us, and so that's scary too. And he fires off a shot or two, and he runs past us into the water, and he gets this alligator from what I can remember, and he pulls it into the land, and he gets it by the tail, and he's swinging it against a tree over and over again until it stopped moving, and he put it down for a little bit, and it kind of twitched a little bit, and he picked it back up and kept hitting it against the tree. And I remember being really traumatized by all of it, and the way my dad told it, every year he would retell the story, and the alligator would grow about a foot,
Yeah.
And after like a decade of him telling the story, this thing's like 12 feet long. And my mom, she was cleaning out some photo albums like not a couple years ago, and she found a photo from that day. And I really did remember the alligator being like bigger than me, and it ended up being like the size of a lizard, like it was this little tiny thing. And I really, to me, I think that story, and just, yeah, it was like traumatizing for me back then, but it definitely got alligators on my radar. But I think it also is the type of storytelling and the type of narratives that I'm interested in, where you're kind of taking real life and kind of applying fiction to it and kind of inflating it a bit. And yeah, I think that it was just a formative story to me. Yeah.
Yeah, well, so for folks listening, Lake Wales is where Orange Blossom Review is. Like, if you're a fan of this show, you know Orange Blossom Review because I cover it every year with Jen Ross, and we camp right there on Lake Wales itself, and have for the last like 5 years and covered that beautiful festival, which you'd be a great fit for, by the way, as an aside. But yeah, okay, so that you started to answer what I wanted to talk to you about, in fact, which is you tell stories in several different mediums, right? So you tell stories through your music, and this record, American Cheese, is full of really fantastical and personal stories. And then you also tell stories, in your painting, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
can you say more about what stories get your attention and which ones you want to then put on canvas or put on record?
Yeah, it's something that a lot a lot of my paintings when I was younger, I would say, were less narrative. And I think that I was always interested in narrative stuff, but it was one of those things where I almost feel like I was building up my skill set to be able to tell the stories I wanted to tell. Like, before I could draw a picture with like a bunch of characters doing different things, you have to first learn how to draw a person, kind of a thing. And so I feel like I've like gotten my visual vocabulary up to a point where I can tell more stories. But uh I'm sorry, one second.
Yeah.
And then the types of stories that I'm interested in, I have always been interested in kind of like the anti-hero, or the
Mm.
maybe even villain or bad guy, or just people that flawed people. And that's also just kind of in like the type of like writers that I like I really like Charles Bukowski or
Mm.
Shel Silverstein. And in both of their writing, they kind of have these like complicated characters and are always, yeah, that's the complicated characters. Yeah.
Why? Where do you think I can relate to that in a huge way? You just named two of my favorites.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever asked myself this question, so I'm going to ask you this question, and maybe I can unpack some things through your answer, and
Yeah.
as we can be thought partners. Where do you think that draw comes from? What is it about? Because I mean, I get like it's not just flawed characters. I mean, Bukowski is like, you could make an argument like a reprehensible human being in a lot of ways, right? So,
Yeah.
like, but I love it. And so,
Yeah.
like, what is it about though? Where do you think that attraction comes from?
It's weird because like I'm trying to even I don't even know. It's one of those things that I just think that like we just are the and it's not everybody is attracted to that character. I feel like that character is for a specific type of person, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever it's when you see it, you know it, you know. And I for me though, I see a little bit of myself in that character, and and my friend Dylan Warnick, he says he writes it so he doesn't become it, sort of a
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where when you're interested in that sort of subject matter, sometimes like you can escape through your writing of that character, so you're not like living it as much, you know. And yeah, I think that's what
Yeah,
it
I think that now that you're saying that, I think that's exactly what it is with me. Is like I'm a pretty upstanding member of
is. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
society,
yeah.
but
You can
deep
escape
down,
through it.
yeah, deep down, there's like this, this wolf that wants to come out that I have to keep at bay. Yeah, hell yeah, for sure. Okay, so at what point do you think, like, when you just talked about how like you sort of had to, and I think it's interesting how you kind of had to get the basics of sort of painting down before you could then go on and tell those stories. Um, is the same thing true of music? And then also, do you think that where do you think at what point do you think that you started to go like, oh, I have stories that I want to tell that
Oh yeah, yeah. So 100%. I feel like with my music and my painting, I've like been putting it out since before I felt competent in it
Mm,
for both things. Like I was making money off my art before I felt like I was still in school for art when I was like making a living off of it. So there was like like a learning, like almost like a growing up in public sort of thing. And I used to change my band name every time I put out a record for like 7 to 13 somewhere like some crazy number. I was recording a record sometimes multiple a year for years on end. And I once I got out of my high school bands where I was playing like hardcore with my friends, just like hardcore punk music,
hmm.
and I was really limited in my knowledge back then. I was a bass player, but I only played the root note on the instrument. I never actually learned how to like play around on the instrument. And once all that stuff kind of dissipated, I started recording songs into my computer to like create like to write them. I would write them while I was recording them. And I did that for so many records that I actually feel like I developed some like weird bad habits where I was writing songs that were more complicated and than I was actually physically capable of playing because I was able to record it once and that was enough to like get it done almost.
Yeah.
And through knowing people that play live and going out to shows more recently and kind of having that become part of my practice of like playing the songs out, it's also changed my criteria for like the types of songs I write where I want to be able to replicate them live and things like that. So it's definitely like I feel like right now though I'm at the perfect learning curve where my songs are sounding pretty close to the way I see them in my head.
Mm.
Um, and I've been getting closer, and it's almost like one of those things where there was like some exponential growth, and it's like the growth is almost getting slower because I'm getting closer to the target. If that makes sense.
It makes a
Yeah,
ton of sense. Where does that come from? Is that just getting up and doing the work every day? Is that time? Is that confidence?
it's a little bit of both. I honestly, I'm gonna have to give a lot of credit to my players and the people I surround myself with. I think it's a little bit of like me becoming a better songwriter, but also the guys that have been around me have been playing with me for like years now on a couple of records. And I feel like they also better understand the vision. You know, it's like one of those things where, especially like, you can't just play them a song and say we're going to replicate this on, you know, or whatever. That's not the process. But I feel like now they better understand me, so the songs are sounding more like me, if that makes
Okay,
sense.
yeah, it does, and that's a good jumping off point to ask you about social practice. You know, like
Yeah.
that's a term that I've uncovered you using, you know, in a conversation, and clips that I saw on the internet, and talking about like interacting with other artists, and then also just the work that you're doing with other artists. Can you talk about that and a little bit more
Yeah.
about that and the significance of it? I'm
Yeah. I'm yeah. I haven't really been talked about this too much, but it's something I think about and talk about with my friends a lot. So I'm definitely down.
Cool.
Social practice. I, on a fluke, when I was applying for college, or like I had already decided I was going to SAIC in Chicago, and I was signing up for classes, and they had these like kind of like required classes, and one of them, they said one of the classes was called social practice, and they said I could either do that or the alternative was life drawing, and both sounded cool, but I figured like I didn't know anybody, so it'd be nice to go do something social where I can meet people. And I had no idea what the class was about, but when I finally got there, the whole point of the class was like he made us make collaborative zines with other members of the class. He talked about how he brought us to art spaces that were kind of like co-ops, and just talked about how like you can navigate through art in a mindful way, and kind of working with other people is dope, and you should, and it's like a great way to kind of more move forward as a group, especially if you're going into it with like intention and like good vibes kind of a thing. And that was kind of the overall gist of the class. And while I was there, he introduced me to a guy who owns this gallery in Chicago called the Co-Prosperity Sphere. Or he doesn't own it, he's like a part owner and he's involved with it. And he owns a bunch of bars in Chicago, and he owns some different publications. And this guy just seemed like he had his hand in every pot. And he let me curate a show there when I was in my freshman year, and I curated in all of my favorite artists that were in my like class, and then I curated in some artists that were currently showing that I admired, and some of them agreed to be in it. And the show went really good. We got the show into the Chicago Reader, and I was still in school. It just all felt very like big to me then, and it still is, and I just kind of through that just saw the value and just kind of continuing to like curate art shows. I curated 2 art shows every semester while I was in school. Then when I got out of school, I was showing a lot in LA, so I just moved out here, and I did a lot of art for the last 10 years out here in LA, and curating shows and organizing art events. And since the pandemic, that's kind of bled over into my music, where my younger brother, he films just a ton of different stuff. He's a videographer and director out here in LA. And one time he filmed a session of me and my buddies doing our music. And it kind of occurred to him, like, because he knew that I really like session channels that film and video songwriters. And my brother basically was like, we should do that. Like, let's continue to do this. And so we started inviting our friends, basically through my session player, Mason Stoops. Like, he's like a good buddy of mine. And through Mason, who plays with everybody, we just invited basically his friends and our friends to come and play in the garage. And it just became a friend of friend thing. And it still is like it has like a small following, but it's something that we really pride ourselves on, making like good, honest recordings of like people in the scene or people rolling through the area. And I can't help but like think back to that class about social practice every time I'm working on these kind of things, and just applying what I've kind of learned through my art practice about like, making zines with your friends and things like that. And like, we put out a compilation record to help benefit the LA fire relief out here in LA. And even the process of getting that across the finish line was very similar to the process of like per se like getting a collaborative book across the finish line, which is something that I've done with other artists where you're getting approvals and like getting the images sent to you or song files or whatever. So that's just, it's a big part of my practice. And the record label that we started now, Soggy Anvil Records, we have 7 artists, including myself, on the roster. And just honestly, it feels like I have so many people involved in my life now. I can't just say, I can't stop moving at this point. It's just kind of putting out fires and just working on the art and the music, you know?
Were there things that, so, I mean, like you said, putting together that compilation, bringing folks together for the garage sessions. I saw Cat Clyde played.
Mm-hmm.
Cat's been on the show. And I just also think she's just incredible. But the and then the record label, you got a lot going on, man. And like, but
Yeah.
also a lot going on where you seem to be the one bringing people together. Like, you seem to be the is that accurate? Are you the one a bringing people together, and then also b sort of running the show? And if so, or if not, like, where do you think, because regardless, you're certainly at the center of a lot of folks coming together to make things, right? So like,
Yeah.
where do you
I,
think those
I,
skills came from, I guess, also?
I mean, I would say it came from a lot from my parents. Like, you know, growing up, like my house was always the house where you never knew how many people were going to be there for dinner that night, kind of a thing. You know, like people would just drop in, whether it was my friends or my dad's friends, you know, and there was always like just good, like my dad always kind of like prided himself on being like good hosts, you know.
Mm.
So I think that's always been a big part, like that's been a big part of it to me, or that's a big part of where it came from. And then as far as like doing that now, it is, I try to, especially with the label and things like that, I look at it as like kind of our job as the label to like, you know, create as much opportunity and space for the other artists to like, or the artists that are involved with it to like create their art, you know?
Mm.
And so whether that's like, you know, booking showcases somewhere else, or, it's a lot of work to do things with a lot of people. I don't know. Like, yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
it
really know where the
is.
end of that sentence goes. It's one of those things. I liken it to like, we're like building the Trojan horse while we like push it towards the castle. Like we don't really know what we're doing. We're just kind of continuing to do stuff and like hopefully it goes somewhere cool, you know?
That's awesome, man. Okay, so what does your routine look like then to make sure that you're maintaining all of that? Like, what does every day look
It's
like
a
for you?
dumpster fire, and but it's honestly no, it's not bad. It like I really don't have a set thing I do. I work on whatever is the most urgent, you know, like whatever deadline has been missed by the most days is like what's getting kind of chipped away at. But and that's been a lot of my design work lately. I've been doing a lot more design work for other artists, and like I just did some posters for Sierra Farrell, and those like had a
Cool.
tight deadline, so it's just like certain projects have to be pushed to the side to work on that, you know. And but while I was working on those, I also had my entire label out here in LA for the showcase that we were doing at the Grand Ole Echo in collaborations with the Grand Ole Echo at the Echo. And so I'm like doing design work in the morning before anybody wakes up, then driving all the label mates to the recording studio or to the garage to record sessions, getting them all dinner, then driving them to their showcases or shows that they have that night, you know, doing emails in between, replying to clients. Like it's a little all over the place really, but I love it. And I have a pretty big social battery, and I also love artists. Like the same way that when I was just curating art shows because I wanted to be around other artists, I felt like that shared something in common with me. I think it's a similar thing with the songwriting. Like I like being around people that really care about the art that they make and put a lot of time into it. And I think that these endeavors are all kind of lead to that. So I like doing it.
Man, that's great. Okay, so an example of really loving the art that you make comes through on your record, American Cheese, and you bury yourself from the very beginning, right? I mean, the first track is quite the personal wild ride of a story. Um, can you talk to me about like in for folks listening when you hear this record, um, you'll I mean I guess we'll get into it a little bit, but you'll hear more of what we're talking about here of like the period of Luke's life that he went through and the realization that you had and working on addressing bipolar and all of these really kind of very heavy things. How did you get to a place where you went, I'm comfortable sharing this story, A, and then B, because I think it's such an important story to share, and then also B, um, decide to share it in this way.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, not funny. I mean, it's like, yeah, I went through, or I am bipolar one. I found that out in like 2017, 2018, around that time. And there was a time when I couldn't even talk about it without like kind of like having a pit in my stomach from just like, like that feeling, like overwhelming feeling of like shame or like, just embarrassment for like the things I'd done or like people I'd let down or freaked out or whatever.
Mhm.
And so there was a lot, like a good period of time where I couldn't even talk about it. And then there was a period of time also where like I wasn't happy because I was trying. I got sober for a year, and I'm trying to get
Mm.
my medications right for this thing that I'm trying to figure out. And so there was also a period of time where even the art that I was could make or like could manage to make during that time, like we're in the period after, I felt like I wasn't firing on all cylinders. Like I wasn't making the art I was making before. So I felt like sort of like this like lessened ability almost. And it took a lot of years of like also like the art that came before that realization too. I think it came from a different place than art comes from now. Like
Mm.
back then I was sort of bleeding the art. I didn't even think about what I was saying. I didn't think about what I was writing. I didn't think about what I was painting. I just was doing it, and just it was coming from just a place of just impulse all the time. And when and I was like burning myself to the ground every night making the stuff. But when I got sober and things like everything calmed down, I didn't feel like I could bleed this stuff anymore. Like I was so in my head about everything, and I almost felt like I needed. I did have to like completely relearn my vocabulary so that I could make the art with intention, as opposed to like just it coming from anywhere. Now I'm like steering the ship as opposed to just going for the ride. And once I got to that point where I'm like making these like kind of like coherent narrative stories, that's when it kind of like that was around the time when I started. I think I'm trying to think about the best way to describe this. I think when I got to the point where I felt like I was making art better than before the realization, that was also like around the time I started to feel comfortable talking about it, because I didn't feel like I was like coming from this place of like being like lesser than or whatever. And that took like a year or two, or maybe even longer. Like I still kind of flinch about it sometimes, but yeah.
Was it? Do you think, like you mentioned, getting sober? Like, do you think that during that time was it about like inhibitions? Because I think that's really interesting, the concept of like being in your head. Because I know that for me, when I'm not drinking, I make stuff that's better, right? Like the stuff
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
make is better. I don't necessarily make more of it. I think for a similar reason, because I do get more in my head about it. I'm more precious about it. I'm more particular about it if I'm sober, and as a result, it comes out better, right? Like the work is just better.
yeah.
Whereas I may be much more likely to, set up the camera and play a song and then put it out there, or write something and put it out there if I'm not as clear headed. Is there something to that for you, like the inhibition thing? Did you have to relearn that?
I think that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And just like, and also like, the accountability that comes with that, like you said, like setting up the camera, putting something out there. Like when you're sober, you kind of have to like, after you've put it out there, like you're just like a little bit more like thinking about what you've done, kind of stuff. And yeah, I think I know now that it's made me a better artist, and not only a better artist, like it's made my practice more sustainable. Like had I kept going down the road I was going down, I'd have killed myself, you know.
Mm.
And so, but now I feel like I can still make the art that kind of has the flavor of what was happening before, and like maybe even like a wilder flavor because I am doing it with intention.
Oh, that's great. Is there an element of like I've been thinking about lately? I feel like lately, by lately I mean the last couple of years, let's say, I've had conversations with people who either got sober or somebody close to them got sober, and in fact, just recently I was talking to Kelsey Walden about a similar concept of this, of the idea of like knowing that you needed to get away from substances, whatever they may be. But also like part of that challenge, something that I feel like we don't talk about enough is a lot of folks lately have been kind of confessing to me or acknowledging to me that like they look back on those times and are like, man, I did have a lot of fun.
Mhm.
It's like in your case, it's also the, you know, some of the wildness of what came out of you being bipolar. How do you look back on those times now? Is there any nostalgia to it? Or do you look like since you've gotten through the shame, is there still like periods of shame? How do you
Yeah, no,
reflect on it now?
there's parts of what I did that like there's parts that I'm embarrassed by for sure. Like definitely. But there's parts that if you told me that story and you told me everybody's fine and nobody got too hurt, like they're hilarious parts of I can acknowledge that there was some funny stuff that happened. And then
Yeah.
like and especially in like there was it's really hard to describe all the delusions that were going through my head, but there was like a brief moment where I thought I inherited the Playboy Mansion and like owned the Playboy Mansion. And in those times I was doing like sketches for like basically the renovations of the Playboy Mansion and what I would do as soon as we moved in because it was like my Playboy Mansion. And that like energy of like having the energy and like manically redesigning the Playboy Mansion that I think I own, I do reminisce and like we like because that's the art was just coming from a different place that was like like yeah, it sounds like like a premise of like a cartoon or something, like and I do miss that kind of manic art making, but that's okay.
Well, yeah, yeah. The trade off, right?
Yeah,
Meaningful relationships and so
yeah,
forth.
yeah,
The
yeah,
law not on your tail.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Okay, but that is it. That's super interesting. So, because I think there's something. Here's another thing that I've noticed lately. I've just been trying to be more present, um, and with a fair degree of success. Like I've been reevaluating my anxiety. So for me, it's that's my mental health challenge is anxiety, and if I don't treat it properly with exercise and writing and making things and reading, and then the practices that through talk therapy I've developed, it can completely take over my life. And so, but when I'm able to manage it and I stay in the present, what I notice is that I am able to get to a place where the creativity flows in that sort of more um, spontaneous kind of way, and my brain is I'm allowed to I let my brain go in different directions because it sounds like that the Playboy Mansion thing, you know, if you can get to that place, but also recognize you don't actually own the Playboy Mansion, or if you can get to that place, right, where you're sort of allowing your imagination to get there, you can create some really fucking cool stuff, right? If you don't have that, if you're able to get out of those inhibitions. And I wonder if there's a path now, or if you found that path to being able to sort of recreate some of those things without the delusion that like you actually do own the thing or whatever it might be.
I think honestly, I talk my wife. She's like a great painter. That painting behind me, it's like a collaborative painting with her. And when when I met her, when I met her, what was at stake in my paintings was what I was interested in and like what was happening to me in my life. It was just kind of like the like poems about my life, you know? And her paintings have like murder in them and people dying and like people like horrible violence and sex and all this crazy stuff. And it kind of made me realize that you can like put more at stake in your paintings by like thinking about what you want to be in your paintings, you know, like just because it didn't happen to me or whatever doesn't mean I can't write about it or expand on it. And so, and what you were saying about trying to find that place where you can kind of put yourself in that mindset. I think I've been writing. I've been uh, really interested in just like I kind of swore off the abstract like a while, like a couple of years ago, and not forever, but for the next bit. All I really want to write about is like stuff that it like stories or like a song that's about something. Like it could be like about a book, but it's like about that thing, you know. And in writing these like sort of like small fictions, I've kind of been able to like let my mind wander in a way that it used to, I guess, like you were saying. Yeah.
It's such an interesting point about stakes. I'm because I think it feels as though e- everything, like the stakes are high in every social interaction, every time I open my phone, every time I, get on
Yeah.
social media. Like it feels like the stakes in an interconnected world, the way we are with, madmen at the helm of nuclear weapons and all these things, is like the stakes just feel super fucking high all the time. At least to me, they do in my day to day life. And so with art, that equation is something I don't think I've considered. Like putting stakes into it, or maybe even is it a way to process the high stakes of life in a healthier
Yeah. Well,
way?
and and it's something that I it's something that it's like a something that I've just realized that I can play with, and something that is just become more interesting to me as of lately, for sure. Like I almost look at like a volume knob the same way I do like the contrast in a painting. You know what I mean? Like what can we add to this narrative to like make it more interesting or more, is there a gun sitting on the bed? Like what is like the thing that makes the whole narrative a little off or creepy or whatever. And I think, yeah, and you can see that on my new record too. Like I'm playing with like this level of like it's like almost like a throbbing fiction where there's enough real stuff in it that it seems real, but then there's parts where it goes too far past it for it to ever be real, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean,
And I'm okay with that.
right. I love that because I think you do a great job on the record of taking us for this ride through this wild world. I mean, one that I was listening to again the other day was Bag of Cash.
Yeah.
And as I was listening to Bag of Cash, I was like, I really want to ask Luke how much of this is real life, how much of it is fiction. And I don't know how much you want to divulge about that
It's
line.
funny. I wonder. There's a line in there where it says you or it's something about trying to get a line out of an empty bag of Coke.
Uh-huh.
Or when we first met, you were trying to get a line out of an empty bag of Coke. And where I got that from was fuck it. I'll drop it because it wasn't them. There was this band coming through town, the Deslons, that were staying with me,
Oh yeah, uh-huh.
and not the Deslons. There was this other guy that was just like a guy that just walked through the door that night when we were all partying at my house,
Mhm.
and he had 3 empty bags of cocaine on the table, and he's trying to get one line out of all 3 bags, and just this character of like trying to get a single line out of all the bags, like that was what stuck with me. And then as far as the story, I mean, we've all gone on benders with our buddies. Like I feel like that one was, I was trying to capture this sort of like, I wanted to do a duet with my buddy Gil, who's singing and wrote the song with me, but I wanted it to be like sort of a Bonnie and Clyde type thing, but 2 friends, so it could be like a platonic duet. And I think, yeah, I'm happy with how it turned out. Like, it's not as that one's not as much true because we were definitely just writing it on the fly, but it has elements of truth in the song.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a standout. I mean, I love the record as a whole, but like it's a standout on the record that just popped into my ear, like popped into my brain on the most recent, maybe two listens ago, I guess. I listened to it a
yeah,
couple more times, and for whatever reason, it really hit me the other day. And I think the reason why it did is because it does have that buddy. I love what you just said there because I can very much relate to the idea of, especially in my 20s, the bender with my buddies and like what kind of hijinks we got into. And it reminds me of my buddy Joe, who I haven't talked to in many years because we weren't good for each other, like we
yeah,
just,
yeah, yeah.
just like it just wasn't. We never got together and didn't have fun, but we also never got together and did anything that we
Didn't
should
get
have
in
been doing.
trouble or
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. We definitely brought the worst out in each other. And I'm in my hometown right now, and I haven't been spent a significant amount of time here in forever. And the ghosts are all coming back, like I'm kind of wrestling with a lot of the ghosts. And that song driving through my hometown just made me think of Joe. And like he
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
would have had 3 bags of coke trying to get
yeah,
one line,
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Precisely.
Um, yeah.
Um, the record also, I mean, the first, I guess, song on the record per se, well, our initials in a heart, the very long monologue that is such a wonderful and wild way to kick off an album, and I'm so glad that you did it. And I'm so glad that you made the choices that you made sequentially and so forth, because it sets the stage for everything else. And I just think it's a bold choice that pays off. And then you go into I Dreamed of Los Angeles. And it's one of the things that I wanted to think, I was thinking about as I was inhabiting this world that you brought us in, that you bring us into, is I'm always interested by Southerners who end up in LA. Like there's some sort of mystical, I've only been to LA a couple of times. There's something sort of mystical to me about it, the movies and so forth. And then also the great bands and the legendary venues and stuff. Can you talk about what led you there?
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff you were just listing. I mean, I would see something like Beverly Hills Cop when I was a kid, or like Crocodile Dundee 3, or like those kind of movies where like they kind of have these like montages through LA, and you just see the palm trees and like the nightclubs and the neon signs, and then they go to Venice Beach and you see all like the rollerbladers and stuff. And I just had this like very like nostalgic view of it in my head. And it's in every movie that you see. I mean, so many movies are like not set in Hollywood, but they're filmed there. So it's like the backdrop to so many movies that you've seen growing up. And then, like you said, like the music, like I was really into like punk and hardcore and stuff as a kid. So that was kind of the mecca for that kind of stuff. And especially skateboarding too, which was something I was really interested in. So when I got older, it's a place I always wanted to be. And then just through a fluke of just me curating those art shows out here, my art got really popular, or not popular. I became a part of the art scene out here. And then through that, I just like had an art career that was kind of like based in LA by the time I graduated college. So it just made sense for me to be here for my fine art. And then, yeah. And then as of now, I think that the music scene in LA, especially for the type of like roots based music, roots music that's happening in LA with in regards to like country music and singer songwriters like making like folk leaning stuff. I I just think it's a great time to be here. There's tons of people putting on great shows and venues around LA in their backyards. Like, people are just excited about that type of music right now out here.
That's
Yeah.
really cool, and I've noticed that and picking up on it. I think about like I just had Gray Delisle on the show recently, and I think about the work that Shooter Jennings continues to do, and
Yep.
just a lot of folks out there doing really really cool stuff. And it made me think. You mentioned being a punk music fan, and this of course LA being a legendary mecca for punk music, especially in the like early '80s. And when I was doing research for this, and I was like watching YouTube videos and so forth, and doing a deep dive into your work. Um, the thing that it reminded me of was the research I did when I had John Doe from X on the show. And
Oh,
I
cool.
read all about because I was kind of ignorant to it. I like punk music a lot, but I didn't really grow up on it. I grew up on more like
Yeah.
more country and bluegrass kind of stuff and hip hop in the 80s and 90s. But later in life, I've kind of gotten more into punk music, and so I did this deep dive into the life that like John Doe and all these sort of forefathers of LA punk music were living. And it seems like you have this collective that feels similar to them in terms of like their manic creativeness, and like they were all kind of playing on each other's bands and together and collaborating. It seems like the thing that you've got going on now has a similar.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, like the collaborative, like that's something that I've always been interested in, in the types of scenes that I really like. Like I really like that whole. I don't even know what its current state is right now, but just that whole New Orleans scene with like Mashed Potato Records, Sam Doors from the Deslons, like when Esther Rose was out there, Chris Acker, like that whole Sierra Farrell spent some time there, like that whole thing. And when you watch like the videos of them like busking and things like that, they're all in each other's bands and things like that. And it's something that as we've grown our thing, it's something that I've tried to foster and I think is really fun. Like we just had our one of the guys on our label, Dylan Warnick. He's rolling out a new record with us right now on Soggy Anvil, and he doesn't have like a dedicated band right now, but he came to town to play our showcase. And one of the bands that we have had in the garage a few times, Harry Katz and the Pistachios, they learned like his whole record and backed him up with like a full horn section and like synchronized backup dancers, singers. Like it was a whole production, and like kind of having that, fostering that kind of like opportunity for like collaboration and like just I have like, I have two kinds of prices for my art. Like I have the price that I charge normal clients and then the homie price that I charge all these songwriters, and
Yeah.
like, and a lot of times it ends up being free, but like, I know that I'm contributing to something that's like larger than myself and is exciting to me. And like to be a part of and not only that, but you said you did the deep dive on like the punk stuff out here. I really, really admire Raymond Pettibon, who is like he was the artist that did a lot of the Black Flag and like Circle Jerk posters and visuals, and that guy's in like museums now around the world. Like you go to like a Museum of Modern Art, you can see a Raymond Pettibon solo exhibition, and like I've seen the value in contributing to a larger scene, even if it doesn't benefit me, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's a moment in time that I want to be a part of, and like even further on that, like another artist I really admire is this guy Craig Stesick, who he was the videographer and like photographer and visual artist that behind a lot of the Dogtown and Z Boys stuff out here for skateboarding. And so that same approach of like he was documenting these skateboarders and photographing them and interviewing them and putting them in magazines in an interesting way to create a scene. It's something to be considered. I don't know. It's something that I'm interested in at the very least,
Yeah, me too, man, for sure. Okay, so thinking through that prism, and then also thinking about the record and your visual art, can you talk about the companion visual art to the record?
Yeah, the cover
Well,
or and the videos and stuff.
like all the stuff around it, and is there a show that's gonna also
There's okay, yeah, okay.
yeah,
So
like
the big art show, yeah. There's so much
yeah.
stuff. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, I'll get
Be
into it.
more specific, Jason. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. No, I want all
So
the
the big
stuff.
art
Yeah,
show. So basically, it's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time is kind of combine, and I have been making attempts at it, but combining a lot of my art practices into like one event that like has the music, the art, the social practice, like just different stuff. And so I've been working with this gallery, Super Cheap Gallery, for over 10 years here in LA. And they're a great group of great group of rowdy people that really throw some of like, I would say the rowdiest art shows in LA. Like you could go to a Super Chief show and see cop cars flipped over and flamethrowers shooting into the sky. It's kind of thing. It's not always that crazy, but it can turn up, you know? And so when I knew my record, the whole theme of the record to me was sort of this like feel like this bad behavior was the overarching theme, and sort of this like feeling of like I know it's bad, but I do it anyways. And I felt like that was kind of encapsulated in the song American Cheese, and so I wanted to curate around the art show this larger art show with basically all my friends and artists I admire from the shows that I've been doing for the past couple of years all around the US and the world, really, with these artists, and have them all make artwork that is an ode to bad behavior. So all the artists are making like, I've seen some of the stuff and it's pretty unhinged that's getting made right now. And all of them are going to make the work. And the show opens on August 1st in LA. And then for every weekend in August for 5 weekends straight, we're doing an event in the space to kind of like get people back in the gallery and looking at the artwork, but also to kind of engage with different art stuff. And the second event is going to be a build day for my No Rules Pinewood Derby, where you come and my buddy will cut a car for you and then you design and paint it. And then the next one is going to be a film screening with Thomas Campbell and Mandy Lynn, who are both showing 2 different movies, both under the theme of bad behavior, they're pretty wild movies.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then the third event is a No Rules Pinewood Derby that I'm throwing, where it is what it is. It is what it says it is. Anybody can make any car as fast as they want. Like last time, there was some really heavy cars that went super fast. I'm waiting for someone to strap a rocket to one. We'll see how it goes. And then the last event being kind of like a songwriter showcase with me and my friends, where I'm just going to have a bunch of buddies, as many as I can wrangle, sing some songs in the gallery, and we'll just hang out and drink some beers.
Holy shit, man. That's
Yeah.
awesome. See, that's the point. That's what I was talking about when I said it reminds me of that 80s punk scene. That's precisely, that's a modern twist on some of the stuff that they were doing, and I'm so excited for you. That sounds incredible. It makes me want to move to LA. That sounds incredible.
The No Rules Pinewood Derby, I did it for the first time 2 years ago, and it really was like, and still is like probably like one of the best, like my favorite thing I've ever done. Like it was so fun, and like like because a lot of my friends are artists, so a lot of the cars were designed just really nice and really cool. But then on top of that, I heard from a lot of ladies that were all so excited because they had all grown up watching their brothers make Pinewood Derby cars for Boy Scouts, but they weren't allowed to make them because they weren't in Boy Scouts. So like they kind of like felt like they were like, getting to finally do it,
Cool.
for the first time, which was cool.
That's so fun, man. Gosh, this has been such a pleasure, dude. I can't believe we're almost up at an hour. We usually start to wind things down with just a conversation about what you're getting down on. So that's the art that has you inspired at the moment, or fired up. Maybe it's just something you're excited about. It could be a record you've been listening to. It could be a painting you saw, TV show, film. It doesn't matter. Book you've been reading.
Yeah. We have this songwriter on our label, Cooper Kenward, who I've been really. I mean, I'm always inspired by what he does. There's a reason he's on the label, but his new record is insanely cool and like has been kind of like reformatting my brain a bit, like as far as like, I don't know, he's got he's got a bank robbing song that sounds like a bank robbing song. He's got a love song that sounds like a love song, and kind of like he's doing this thing very much so, which I admire when songwriters do, which is like make the instrumentation in service of the song and not just like trying to like get a sound across. Like it's more about like making these, like letting the song be what the song wants to be. And that's something that I've been really, just kind of vibing out with Cooper's record a lot and just thinking about that.
Well, I told you how I went on this road trip and I burned a CD of your record. Well, I burned a CD of his record too. So I listened to that and completely agree with you about everything you just said. And I'm gonna get him on the Marinade as well. And I can't wait to pick his brain because that record is absolutely outstanding.
It's it's his best work, and I've been following him for a while. Like with Cooper was actually the first person to submit to Back in the Garage. He was the first person to say, "Hey, I like what you're doing. Can I come do it?" You know,
Hmm.
and we had him over, and like right away, I was like, "Who is this like baby faced old soul that like writes these like amazing songs?" And I just kind of kept asking him to hang out and all that, and then he was the first person to release something other than myself on our record label as well. So I really like Cooper. I think he's the best. Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. What did I sort of skipped over this, and I don't know why, but like, what inspired you to start the record label?
Um. Well, at first it had a different it what like there's two things that inspired it. I think. Um. The first iteration of the label wasn't with the ambition of doing full length releases. We were only going to do singles for singer songwriters that didn't have a dedicated band. And the idea being that I have this friend, Mason Stoops, who's a great session player, and we'll curate a band for songwriters that don't have a band and like make like little small recording projects. And I'll design some cool merch to go with it, and that'll be it. And then we did that a couple of times and kind of like realized that we are the limitations of that, you know?
Hmm.
And we started to want to do like longer releases with these artists to like kind of expand on like their like Cooper is like the best example of that. Like Cooper had done a single with us that we were really proud of, and then he wanted to release his full length with us, but we didn't actually have the infrastructure for it at that time. But basically, I had seen you know Nick Shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had seen him. I just like watched him and all of those people do Garhole records and really kind of successfully create an infrastructure that is really beneficial to all involved. And I was really inspired by that, really. And I was like, well, if it's they just did it, like it's possible. And so
Hmm.
I actually had a phone call with I called up Kurt, the guy, the label manager over there, and just kind of picked his brain. Was like, am I crazy for wanting to start a fucking record label at this point in time? You know, when everybody complains that you can't make a living doing music, you know.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, you kind of are, but it's not impossible. And like if you know like you get the right distributor and like all this stuff, and I basically told the way it got to the point where it's at was I had a list of artists that I liked and a list of artists that were down for the cause. And I just basically asked all of them, like, if you'll commit to putting out a record with me, I'll commit to just doing everything I can to make this more of a real thing at every turn so that it becomes more beneficial to be like like it really started out as more of a collective if than a record label. Like to put out a record with us meant that it just said it was put out by Soggy Anvil Records. But
Mm.
quickly we're getting resources and like distribution and things like that figured out because we rallied together early. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things where I don't think it would have worked out had I just said I'm starting a record label and like but now we've hired music lawyers and all that stuff, and all that
Hmm.
is because everyone kind of said yes before it even was a real thing, you know. So
Well, and that's a testament to the community that you fostered leading up to that, right? And your ability to bring people together, that people to trust you, that you're gonna do right by them. I mean, to enter into like a relationship like that where business is ultimately going to get involved, it changes things, right? When money gets involved, but it sounds like you'd already built that trust with folks and the community with folks. And I'm really inspired by that story, man, because I think about like for me in the podcasting world, and it's everything has changed in the almost 8 years that I've been doing this, and I just didn't see the changes coming. And so thinking more about how to lean into my DIY ethos as things are expanding and blowing up to big companies getting involved and Spotify becoming such a big player in the podcast world, all these things that I just didn't see coming and wasn't prepared for. And I think my approach now has been like, I'm going to lean into my community that I've built, and the people that I know are going to support the show and do good work and continue to help me to foster this thing that I've got, rather than try to keep up with the big boys, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally, totally. I mean that I mean, we're still like at the just fostering the thing that we have, but I totally agree that like making art with the people around you is kind of like where it's at, you know. And
Yeah.
even like a lot of times when I'm trying to figure out what player to put on a song, a lot of times my answer is like, who's going to be the most excited when I give them a phone call to come over and
Mm,
hang out. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like making art with the people that are in your network is what's up, you know?
Yeah. Dude, that's great. I'm so grateful for your time. I'm super excited for you and all the incredible things you have coming up just in a few short months. And then for folks to hear American Cheese, I've really enjoyed listening to this record, man. It is truly a wild ride and one that gives and gives. And like I said, I've listened to it a ton of times, and I still find little nuggets that I can kind of grab onto and project my own experiences onto. And that's what you want from a record. So thank you so much again for this wonderful art and for sharing so much time with us.
All right, thank you, man. And you have a great day. And thanks for diving in and asking all these good questions.
Awesome. Sounds great, dude. Talk to you
All
later.
right, later, bud.
Bye. Luke Pelletier, y'all. Thank you so much, Luke. Thank all of you for listening. LukePelletierArt.com for all things Luke. The song you're hearing in this episode is Stoned at the Pearly Gates from his new record, American Cheese, which, again, can't recommend enough. Just, I don't know how else to say it, but wild ride. I mean, just a fascinating piece of art. And the more you uncover about Luke, the more interesting he is just as a whole. MarinadePodcast.com for all things the Marinade. I have a couple of recent written pieces up there. I also want to draw your attention to Substack. If you search Marinade Podcast on Substack, you can find some more political and culture writings from me. MarinadePodcast.substack.com is where you can find that. Also, written pieces that are more traditionally Marinade focused are over on marinadepodcast.com. Things like a review of Kelsey Walden's Every Ghost. I wrote an essay about how we consume music and how I think we should all run fast as we can away from Spotify. What I think we can and are potentially going to do going forward in terms of consuming music. Spoiler alert, I really want to push people to buy more physical copies and support folks that way. Follow us on all the socials. We're even back on Facebook, y'all. And I'm actually kind of enjoying Facebook. Is this a sign of me just being an old man now? Maybe. I'm thinking out loud right now, workshopping this with y'all. I actually am really enjoying it, especially like the events and that kind of thing. And I'm hoping that the fall, which is going to be incredibly busy for me in a good way, in the best way. I'm also hoping to get some events going there, Marinade related events as well as Jason Earl music stuff. So it's kind of been fun, honestly, to be on Facebook. I never thought I'd say that. Subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. Tell a friend about the show. These are all free ways to support the Marinade. Go do that while you're listening right now, please. It makes a huge difference for us and costs so little of your time and energy. Also follow Life's Greatest Hits on Instagram. That's my other show with my dear friend Jordan Foley. We're having a blast with that show, y'all. As you're listening to this coming Friday, we have an episode about Paolo Nutini's Sunny Side Up. Our Allison Russell Outside Child episode is out, and folks have been connecting with it. Thank you for listening, y'all. We really appreciate all the interactions that we've had. Lately, I feel like both with Life's Greatest Hits and with the Marinade, folks are interacting quite a bit. I think I keep talking about how much I need community, and I feel like folks are looking for that and are connecting, through the show and through this work. So thank you so much. If you really like this Marinade thing, consider joining our Patreon community. Now that we're on Substack, y'all, I mean, those are two different ways you can support the show. If you prefer, I know some folks prefer one platform over the other. If you're already over on Substack, I publish kind of different things over there as of now. But, give me some feedback, because I could publish the same stuff that I publish on Patreon over on Substack. If you prefer one over the other, you could just, it doesn't take much for me to just a couple of clicks and be able to do the same content in both places. So let me know what you think about that. I'm new to Substack, like I said, but that Patreon community we've had since almost the beginning. And believe it or not, we're coming up on 8 years of the Marinade, y'all. We got cool stuff going on with the Patreon. We have the return of What We're Getting Down On with my dear friend Peter Haraldson, where we talk about the art that has us fired up at the moment. Peter has been preoccupied raising a baby. Super stoked for him and his wonderful wife, Heather. And so he's been a little busy with an infant, but life seems to be sort of evening out a little bit for him now. So we're going to restart that series, that monthly What We're Getting Down On series, which has been so much fun for us over the last few years. It's crazy to me how long we've been doing all this stuff, y'all. And I'm just so thankful that every single one of you listens and spreads the word. I'm so grateful. And the folks that are able to contribute via Patreon, or now with the Substack, or if you just want to Venmo or PayPal us at the Marinade, we're able to do so many cool things as a result of the generosity of our listeners. But y'all, above all, as I always say, we're so thankful that each of you listen and spread the word about the Marinade. I've got so many cool episodes in the can ready to go right now. Jesse Daniel Edwards is coming up. I'm going to record tomorrow with Evan Barber. It's just like the hits keep coming, and I'm so excited, and I'm just so grateful. We've got some really cool things in the works, and this is looking to be another amazing fall coming up with festivals and opportunities that are on the horizon, some of which I can't talk about exactly right now, but I might do something over on Patreon and or Substack today. So just to kind of like give folks a little bit of a window into what cool stuff we have coming down the pike. Y'all, until next time, go out and create something. Cheers.